I strode into the grand opening of our family vineyard, my chest puffed with pride. After years of hard work and perseverance, our dreams were finally coming to fruition. The sun shone brightly, casting a warm glow over the lush vineyards, a symbol of our triumph over adversity. As I scanned the crowd of well-wishers and local dignitaries, my eyes locked onto a familiar figure, my father, Patrick. A surge of conflicting emotions washed over me. I hadn't seen him since he walked out on us 18 years ago, abandoning my mother and me when I was just 10 years old, diagnosed with a rare genetic disorder. Well, if it isn't little Rowan," he sneered, sauntering over to me. "I must say I'm surprised you're still kicking." His words stung like a slap in the face, reigniting the pain of his betrayal. I clenched my fists, fighting back the urge to lash out. "It's good to see you too, Patrick," I replied, my voice laced with sarcasm. He let out a mocking laugh, his eyes scanning the vineyard with disdain. "So this is what you and your mother have been up to all these years? A little winemaking venture? Don't get too ahead of yourselves. We both know this won't last." Flashes of memory flooded my mind. My mother's tear-stained face as she struggled to make ends meet, the endless nights spent tending to the vines, and the countless sacrifices we made to turn this dream into a reality. "You don't know anything about what we've been through," I snapped, my voice quivering with emotion. "You gave up on us, but we never gave up on ourselves." Patrick's gaze hardened, and he leaned in closer, his breath hot on my face. "Enjoy your little moment in the sun, Rowan, but mark my words, this charade won't last forever." With a dismissive wave of his hand, he turned and disappeared into the crowd, leaving me seething with anger and determination. As guests mingled around me, congratulating me on our success, I couldn't help but feel a newfound resolve. We had come too far to let anyone, especially my father, undermine our achievements. This vineyard was more than just a business venture. It was a testament to our resilience, our unwavering spirit, and our ability to rise above even the most daunting challenges. As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and crimson, I made a silent vow. No matter what obstacles lay ahead, I would fight tooth and nail to protect everything we had built, not just for myself, but for my mother, who had sacrificed so much for this dream to become a reality. This wasn't just about making great wine. It was about reclaiming our dignity, our pride, and our place in the world. And if Patrick thought he could walk back into our lives and tear it all down, he had another thing coming. A few days after the grand opening, my mother Elsie approached me with a warm smile. "Rowan, I want to show you something." She led me out to the vineyards, her eyes sparkling with pride. As we strolled through the rows of lush grapevines, she began to share the story of how this place came to be. "After your father left, I was devastated. We had nothing, no money, no support, and a bleak future ahead of us." Her words painted a vivid picture of the struggles we had faced. I remembered those days all too well, the constant worry, the sleepless nights, and the overwhelming sense of hopelessness. "But I knew I couldn't give up," she continued. "I had to find a way to provide for us, to give you the life you deserved." I watched in awe as she recounted how she had stumbled upon this abandoned property, a diamond in the rough. With sheer grit and determination, she had transformed this neglected land into the thriving vineyard it was today. "It wasn't easy," she said, her voice tinged with a mix of pride and exhaustion. "There were days when I thought I wouldn't make it, but then I'd look at you, and I'd find the strength to keep going." As we reached the end of the vineyard, a figure emerged from the shadows, my father, Patrick, his lips curled into a sneer as he surveyed the lush surroundings. "Well, isn't this a touching little story?" he mocked. "But let's be real here. This whole thing is a pipe dream, and you both know it." My mother's face hardened, her eyes blazing with defiance. "You don't get to come back here and try to tear us down, Patrick. Not after everything you've put us through." Patrick let out a derisive laugh. "Come on, Elsie. You really think this little operation is going to last? You're living in a fantasy world." I stepped forward, my anger boiling over. "Don't talk to her like that," I growled. "You have no idea the sacrifices she's made to get us to this point." Patrick turned his gaze towards me, his eyes cold and unforgiving. "Oh, I know all about sacrifice, Rowan. I sacrificed a hell of a lot more than either of you ever did." His words struck a nerve, and I felt my hands clench into fists. "You sacrificed nothing," I spat. "You abandoned us. You left us to fend for ourselves while you went off to do God knows what." Patrick's expression hardened, and for a moment I thought he might lash out, but instead he simply shook his head and turned away. "Believe what you want," he said over his shoulder, "but mark my words, this little venture of yours is doomed to fail." As he disappeared back into the shadows, I felt a surge of determination rise within me. We had come too far to let his negativity bring us down. This vineyard was our legacy, our triumph over adversity, and I would do whatever it took to protect it. In the weeks following Patrick's visit, I noticed a shift in the community's attitude toward our vineyard. Whispers and sidelong glances replaced the warm smiles and congratulations we had grown accustomed to. One afternoon, I ran into our family friend Maria at the local market. Her usual cheerful demeanor was replaced by a somber expression. "Rowan," she said, her voice low, "I'm not sure how to tell you this, but there have been some rumors going around town about your family's business." My heart sank as she recounted the vicious lies that had been spreading, allegations of shady business practices, questionable sourcing of our grapes, and even accusations of tax evasion. "People are saying it's only a matter of time before the authorities shut you down," Maria added, her eyes filled with concern. I felt a surge of anger coursing through my veins. There was only one person who would stoop so low: my father, Patrick. After his failed attempt to demoralize us directly, he had resorted to underhanded tactics to try and undermine our success. That evening, I confronted him at his dingy apartment on the outskirts of town. The stench of stale cigarettes and cheap whiskey assaulted my senses as I barged through the door. "What's this I hear about you spreading lies about our business?" I demanded, my voice trembling with fury. Patrick lounged in a tattered recliner, a smug grin plastered across his face. "Lies? I'm just telling people the truth about how you really operate that little winery of yours. That's a load of crap, and you know it," I shot back. "We've worked too damn hard to let you drag our name through the mud like this." Patrick's expression hardened as he rose to his feet, towering over me. "You think you're so high and mighty, don't you? Well, let me tell you something, sweetheart. You and your mother are living on borrowed time. It's only a matter of time before the whole house of cards comes crashing down." I refused to back down, staring him square in the eye. "Is that a threat?" Patrick let out a hollow laugh. "Call it what you want, but if you know what's good for you, you'll pack it in now before things get really ugly." As I stormed out of his apartment, my heart pounded with a mix of anger and determination. Patrick had crossed a line, and I knew I couldn't let his malicious actions go unanswered. We had built our vineyard from the ground up, pouring our blood, sweat, and tears into every inch of the property. I wasn't about to let his bitterness and jealousy tarnish everything we had worked so hard for. It was time to take a stand, not just for our family, but for our legacy and the future we had fought so hard to create. In the wake of Patrick's smear campaign, I found myself at a crossroads. Part of me wanted to confront him head-on, to demand he retract his lies and make amends. But a larger part knew that reasoning with him would be futile. He was too consumed by his own bitterness and resentment to ever see the truth. That's when I stumbled upon an opportunity that could be our saving grace: the prestigious Napa Valley Wine Competition. If we could win a coveted medal or two, it would not only validate our hard work and commitment to quality, but also silence the doubters and naysayers once and for all. I presented the idea to my mother over a glass of our finest Cabernet Sauvignon. Her eyes lit up with a mixture of excitement and determination. "This could be our chance to show everyone what we're truly made of," she said, her voice brimming with conviction. Over the next few weeks, we poured every ounce of our energy into preparing for the competition. We spent long hours in the vineyards, meticulously tending to each vine and ensuring every grape was perfect. In the winery, we refined our techniques, tweaking and adjusting until our wines were nothing short of exceptional. As the competition drew nearer, I could sense a shift in the dynamic between my mother and me. The bond we had forged through years of hardship and perseverance had grown even stronger. We were no longer just mother and daughter. We were partners, united in our mission to prove the naysayers wrong. The day of the competition arrived, and we found ourselves surrounded by some of the most prestigious wineries in the region. As we set up our booth and prepared our samples, I caught sight of Patrick hovering near the entrance, a sneer etched onto his face. "Well, well, look who's decided to join the big leagues," he taunted as he approached us. "You two really think you've got what it takes to compete with the best of the best?" My mother's jaw clenched, but before she could respond, I stepped forward. "We don't need your approval or validation, Patrick. We're here to showcase our hard work and dedication, something you know nothing about." Patrick let out a derisive laugh. "Hard work? Please, you're living in a fantasy world if you think this little stunt is going to change anything." As he turned and stalked away, I felt a surge of determination coursing through my veins. We would show him, and the entire world, just how wrong he was. When the judging began, we poured our hearts into every sample, sharing the story and passion behind each vintage. As the judges tasted and evaluated our offerings, I could see the impressed expressions on their faces, a stark contrast to the skepticism and doubt we had grown accustomed to. By the end of the day, our booth was swarmed with admirers and potential buyers, all eager to get their hands on our award-winning wines. And as the results were announced, we found ourselves standing tall among the winners, clutching prestigious medals and accolades. As I scanned the crowd, I caught a glimpse of Patrick, his face etched with a mixture of disbelief and shame. In that moment, I knew we had won more than just a competition. We had reclaimed our dignity, our pride, and our rightful place in the world we had built from the ground up. The air at the wine competition was thick with excitement and anticipation. As I stood beside my mother, proudly displaying our award-winning vintages, I couldn't help but feel a sense of triumph wash over me. We had defied the odds and proven our worth, earning the respect and admiration of some of the most prestigious names in the industry. Out of the corner of my eye, I caught sight of Patrick lurking near the edge of the crowd, his expression a mixture of contempt and begrudging respect. As our gazes met, he quickly averted his eyes, clearly uncomfortable with the reality of our success. As the event drew to a close, a well-dressed woman approached our booth, introducing herself as a journalist from a prominent local publication. "I couldn't help but overhear the story behind your wines," she said, her eyes gleaming with interest. "It's truly an inspirational tale of perseverance and resilience." My mother and I exchanged a glance, silently communicating our eagerness to share our journey with the world. We recounted the struggles we had faced, the adversity we had overcome, and the unwavering determination that had propelled us forward, even in the face of overwhelming doubt and criticism. Throughout our retelling, the journalist nodded intently, scribbling notes, and occasionally glancing in Patrick's direction. It became clear that she had picked up on the undercurrent of tension between us, and her interest was piqued. As we wrapped up our conversation, the journalist thanked us profusely, promising to share our story with her readers in a way that truly captured the essence of our triumph. In the days that followed, the anticipation of the upcoming article hung in the air like a thick fog. I knew that once our story hit the press, there would be no turning back. The truth would be laid bare for the world to see, and Patrick's attempts to undermine our success would be exposed for the petty, vindictive acts they were. Sure enough, when the article hit newsstands, it was a masterpiece of storytelling. The journalist had woven our journey into a captivating narrative, highlighting the stark contrast between our unwavering determination and Patrick's bitter, spiteful behavior. The article quickly went viral, garnering attention not just locally but across the entire region. Suddenly, our little family winery was thrust into the spotlight, and the accolades and praise poured in from all corners. But amidst the celebration, there was one person who remained conspicuously silent: Patrick. Days passed, and not a word was heard from him, but I could sense the storm brewing beneath the surface. It all came to a head one afternoon when Patrick showed up unannounced at the winery, his face twisted into a mask of rage and humiliation. "You think you've won, don't you?" he spat, his words dripping with venom. "Well, let me tell you something. This isn't over, not by a long shot." Before either of us could respond, he produced a crumpled piece of paper from his jacket pocket, waving it in our faces. I've got a contract here that gives me full ownership of this entire operation. You two have been squatting on my property all these years, and it's time I took back what's rightfully mine." Patrick's words hung in the air like a thick, oppressive fog, threatening to suffocate the very dreams we had fought so hard to realize. As he waved that crumpled piece of paper in our faces, a sick sense of dread washed over me. "You can't be serious," I managed to choke out, my voice barely above a whisper. "After everything we've built, everything we've sacrificed, you think you can just waltz in here and take it all away?" Patrick's lips curled into a cruel sneer, his eyes glinting with malice. "I'm dead serious, sweetheart. This contract gives me full legal ownership of this entire operation. You and your mother have been living on borrowed time, and that time is up." My mother's face had gone pale, her hands trembling at her sides. "Patrick, please," she pleaded, "let's not do anything rash. We can find a way to work this out, to come to an agreement that works for everyone." But Patrick was having none of it. He let out a derisive laugh, shaking his head in mock pity. "You just don't get it, do you? This isn't about coming to an agreement. This is about me taking back what's rightfully mine. You two had your little moment in the sun, but now it's time to face reality." As he turned to leave, I felt a surge of anger and defiance rise within me. We had poured our blood, sweat, and tears into this vineyard, transforming it from a barren wasteland into a thriving, award-winning operation. There was no way in hell I was going to let Patrick strip us of our legacy, our pride, without a fight. "This isn't over," I called after him, my voice ringing with conviction. "We'll see you in court if that's what it takes. You won't get away with this, not on my watch." Patrick paused, turning to face me with a cold, calculating stare. "Bring it on, sweetheart. The law is on my side, and you know it. But hey, if you want to waste your time and money on a losing battle, be my guest." In the days and weeks that followed, our once idyllic vineyard became a battleground. Patrick made good on his threat, filing a lawsuit that threatened to strip us of everything we had built. The legal fees piled up, draining our resources and threatening to bankrupt us before we even had a chance to fight. But through it all, we refused to back down. My mother and I spent countless hours poring over documents, searching for any shred of evidence that could counter Patrick's claims. We rallied our supporters, garnering an outpouring of support from the community that had come to embrace our story of resilience and perseverance. And then, just when it seemed like all hope was lost, a glimmer of light emerged. Buried deep within a stack of old financial records, my mother uncovered a document that turned the tide in our favor. A legally binding contract that she had drafted years ago, safeguarding the vineyard's ownership and rendering Patrick's claims null and void. As we stepped into the courtroom for the final showdown, a hush fell over the gallery. Patrick sat across the aisle, his face a mask of barely contained fury. But for the first time in years, I felt a sense of calm wash over me. We had the truth on our side, and no amount of lies or manipulation could change that. One by one, our evidence was presented, each piece weaving together a tapestry of resilience, hard work, and undetermination. And as the gavel fell, sealing Patrick's fate and cementing our victory, a weight lifted from my shoulders. We had weathered the storm, emerging battered but unbroken, our bonds stronger than ever before. And as we embraced, tears of joy and relief streaming down our faces, I knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, we would face them together, a united front, unshakable in our resolve and unwavering in our commitment to the legacy we had built from the ground up. The courtroom was a cauldron of raw emotion, the air thick with tension and anticipation. As the judge prepared to render his verdict, I could feel the weight of years of struggle and sacrifice pressing down upon us. Patrick sat across the aisle, his face contorted into a mask of barely contained rage. He knew, deep down, that his deception had been exposed. His desperate attempt to claw back what he had so callously abandoned years ago had failed. The judge cleared his throat, commanding the attention of the hushed gallery. "In the matter of Leeds v. Leeds," he began, his voice ringing with authority, "the court finds in favor of the defendants, Elsie and Rowan Leeds." A collective gasp rippled through the room, but I barely heard it over the sound of my own heart pounding in my ears. We had done it. We had prevailed against the odds. our perseverance and determination winning out over Patrick's bitter, vindictive schemes. As the judge continued to lay out the details of the ruling, dismissing Patrick's claims and affirming our rightful ownership of the vineyard, I could see the color draining from my father's face. His eyes were wild, darting back and forth as the reality of his defeat set in. When the gavel finally struck, sealing our victory, a wave of relief washed over me. It was over. The years of turmoil, the constant fear of having everything we had built ripped away, the weight of Patrick's looming presence casting a shadow over our lives. My mother turned to me, her eyes shining with tears of joy, and we embraced, our bodies trembling with the release of pent-up emotion. In that moment, words were unnecessary. The bond we shared, forged in the fires of adversity, spoke louder than any language could. As we emerged from the courthouse, blinking in the bright sunlight, a crowd of well-wishers had gathered, cheering and applauding our triumph. Friends, neighbors, and supporters from across the community had rallied around us, their voices raised in celebration of our hard-won victory. But amidst the jubilation, one figure stood apart. Patrick, his shoulders slumped in defeat, his once cocky swagger now replaced by a hollow, defeated expression. As our eyes met, I felt a pang of something unexpected. Pity. For all his bluster and bravado, Patrick was a broken man, his bitterness and resentment having consumed him from within. He had sacrificed everything, his family, his integrity, his very soul, in pursuit of a hollow vengeance, and in the end, he had nothing left to show for it. As the crowd parted to let us through, I paused, turning to face my father one last time. "It didn't have to be this way, Patrick," I said, my voice laced with a mixture of sadness and resolve. "We gave you chance after chance to be a part of our lives, to share in the joy and triumph of what we've built, but you let your anger and your pride blind you to what really matters." Patrick's eyes narrowed, his jaw clenched, but he remained silent, unable or unwilling to offer a response. "I hope someday you can find peace," I continued. "But until then, know that we won't let your hatred and negativity poison our lives any longer. This is our victory, our legacy, and no one, not even you, can take that away from us." With that, I turned and walked away, leaving Patrick to grapple with the ruins of his own making. As we made our way through the crowd, surrounded by the warm embrace of our community, I felt a sense of lightness, a weight lifted from my shoulders. The long, arduous battle was over, and we had emerged victorious, not just in the eyes of the law, but in the court of public opinion. Our story of resilience, perseverance, and unwavering determination had resonated far beyond the boundaries of our little town, inspiring others and cementing our place as a symbol of what can be achieved when you refuse to back down in the face of adversity. The warm summer breeze carried the sweet scent of ripening grapes as I stood surveying the vineyards, a sense of pride and contentment washing over me. After years of struggle and turmoil, we had finally emerged victorious, our spirit unbroken, and our legacy secure. As I gazed upon the lush rows of vines, their tendrils reaching towards the golden California sun, I couldn't help but reflect on the long, winding path that had brought us to this moment. It had been a journey fraught with challenge and adversity, but every obstacle, every setback, had only strengthened our resolve and deepened our appreciation for the hard-won triumphs that lay before us. The sound of laughter and music drifted across the grounds, and I turned to see our friends, neighbors, and supporters gathering for the grand reopening celebration. Tables laden with our finest vintages and locally sourced delicacies dotted the landscape, and the air was alive with the buzz of joyous conversation. As I made my way through the crowd, I was met with warm embraces and heartfelt congratulations from those who had stood by us through thick and thin. Their unwavering support had been a lifeline in our darkest hours, a reminder that we were not alone in our fight. "Rowan, my dear," a familiar voice called out, and I turned to see my mother, Elsie, beaming with pride and joy. "Look at what we've accomplished, against all odds." I pulled her into a tight embrace, my eyes misting over with tears of gratitude. "We did it, Mom. We proved them all wrong, and we did it together." As we separated, I caught sight of a figure lingering at the edge of the celebration, a mere shadow of his former self. Patrick stood apart from the revelry, his shoulders slumped, his gaze fixed on the ground. For a brief moment, our eyes met, and I saw a flicker of something. Regret, perhaps, or a fleeting glimpse of the man he once was, before bitterness and resentment consumed him. But as quickly as it came, the moment passed, and he turned away, disappearing into the fading twilight. "Don't let him spoil this moment, Rowan," my mother said, following my gaze. "He made his choices, and now he has to live with the consequences. This is our victory, our triumph over adversity." I nodded, pushing Patrick from my mind, and allowed myself to be swept up in the joyous celebration. As the night wore on and the stars began to twinkle in the inky black sky, I found myself surrounded by those who had become more than just friends and supporters. They were family, bound together by the shared experience of overcoming seemingly insurmountable odds. And as I raised a glass of our award-winning Cabernet Sauvignon, its rich, velvety notes dancing on my tongue, I couldn't help but feel a sense of gratitude for the lessons we had learned along the way. Hardship had forged us into something stronger, more resilient, and more appreciative of the simple joys life had to offer. "To new beginnings," I proclaimed, my voice ringing out over the gathered crowd. "To the triumphs yet to come, and to the unbreakable bonds that have carried us through the darkest of times." A chorus of cheers and clinking glasses echoed across the vineyards, and in that moment, I knew that no matter what challenges the future might hold, we would face them head-on, our spirits buoyed by the knowledge that we had already weathered the storm and emerged victorious. As the night gave way to dawn, and the first rays of sunlight peeked over the horizon, I felt a sense of peace and contentment settle over me. The long, arduous battle had been won, and a new chapter was beginning, one filled with promise, hope, and the sweet taste of hard-earned success. And although the specter of Patrick's bitterness might linger on the periphery, I knew that it held no power over us any longer. We had reclaimed our dignity, our pride, and our place in the world, and no force, no matter how formidable, could ever take that away from us again.